David, the third piece we're featuring on the homepage is Chris Salavich's face cover story on Julian Cope from November 1981. And again, you get a name check. So Julian says, Dave Bates, the A&R man who signed us, i.e. Teardrop Explodes, told Bill Drummond, who is then managing them, if Julian gets his shit together, he'll be a real pillar. And Bill just laughed hysterically. Well, in a way, Julian has become a bit of a pillar, hasn't he? And we thought we would add a Julian Cope audio interview this week so we could talk a bit about Cope. So, Mark, do you want to just tell us about the Cope audio?
Yeah, it's actually very amusing. He's basically launching his album Peggy Suicide to the French rock press, which in itself is a fairly baffling thing to do. This began around April 91. It's quite short, but I mean, as we all know, he's got the gift of the gab. And he talks about not wanting to be seen as caring, not wanting to be Sting or Billy Bragg, which I thought was fairly marvellous. He kind of goes into this stuff about Peggy's suicide, being Mother Earth, freaking out. Let's listen to this clip. It's about being a cult artist.
I've always dealt in metaphor, and unfortunately, you can deal in metaphor for just so long that in the end people can misunderstand. People just think he's the guy who wears a turtle shell on his back. He's the guy who calls himself, Saint Julien and all this kind of stuff. And it's just become a cult. And a cult is a terrible thing to be. Because a cult just means I don't sell records. Shut your mouth, put your head back in the clouds and shut your mouth.
I love that kind of brutal assessment of what it is to be a cult. He talks about being an ambassador of looseness, trying to turn people on that it's cool to hang upside down or take drugs. I mean, he just comes out with all this kind of explosive stuff. You can hear all the journalists kind of giggling all around him. Yeah. Let's listen to the other clip. Let's return to the Tears for Fears issue. Jasper, do you want to play this next clip?
I'm on Island Records. It's cheap. They think you got to spend lots of money, You don't have to be Tears for Fears. It's like Tears for Fears don't consider it real art unless it costs £1 million, which is bullshit.
Anyway, it's short. It's very engaging. We'll play another clip at the end of the podcast on Peggy's suicide. But no, I mean it's about 12. 13 minutes long, the whole thing, but it's very well worth listening. It's
fabulous. He's so funny and he's so bright, isn't he? David, tell us how you first connected with Julian and the Teardrop Explodes.
I was going to a gig and I heard John Peel and this song came on, and I loved the title and I just loved the sound. I just thought, this is amazing. It was Bouncing Babies, and it was on Zoo Records. And I absolutely adored them, and I thought, okay, Zoo, small little label, I sense I could maybe go in there. So off I went to see the Teardrops.
The shark circles the zoo.
Oh, yeah, the shark does circle the zoo. I ended up going to see them 3 or 4 times. Once they were supporting Joy Division, or Joy Division was supporting them. I saw them with Echo. Joy Division, Teardrops and Echo and the Bunnymen was on one bill.
Wow.
And that was at the YMCA and London Road, Tottenham Court Road, rather.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The another time I saw them was up in Middlesbrough, where they were playing as a headliner. And it was on a Friday night, and I don't know if you know about Middlesbrough in the 1970s, but it was a bit of a tribal thing. And on a Friday night, everybody met down at the rock club. So you had skinheads, you had Mohicans, you had, punks, you had all sorts of various tribes were represented, and usually a big fight broke out. And it's exactly what happened when I saw Def Leppard there a couple of years earlier. So nothing had changed. It was the same. I saw them at the South Bank Poly, and I just knew I had to sign. I met them, and I met with Bill, and we agreed that I would sign the band. Bill and Dave Balfe were business partners, and the last thing I was saying to them was, I actually believe that Julian Cope will become a pop star, which is the pillar bit you're talking about. And they both fell around laughing. They couldn't believe that the idea of Julian Cope becoming a pop star. And the next thing is that Balfe leans across to me and said, "It's your responsibility. You've signed this group. You best not fail."
Wow.
So that was an interesting one. Because of the music that I grew up with, the music I was interested in, was also overlap with Julian. So we became good friends, and we used to come round to my flat and listen to, because I had quite a huge collection of records still, which had got bigger, and he wanted to come round and listen to all the sort of rare records that I had, and he just moved in. So we became flatmates.
For how long were you flatmates?
Oh, about a year or so.
Yeah. And how was it, sharing
there was another guy who used to share the flat with us called John, and we used to take it in turns. We used to live just off Lisson Grove, around the corner from where Paul Cook and Steve Jones lived, funnily enough. And we used to get, there is the famous Seashell fish and chip shop on Lisson Grove. And we would take it in turns to go around and go and get the fish and chips. But we decided to give up with Julian because every time he went round there, he'd be gone for an hour because people would want him to sign autographs and stuff. He'd come back with freezing cold fish and chips. It was useless. So he'd get off the fish and chip duty.
And he has sort of carved out such a fascinating niche for himself as a sort of polymathic presence in the culture and the books he's written. I mean, he's a brilliant writer on music, as I realised when he wrote this amazing piece for NME about kind of psychedelic punk. And then I got in hot water with him for not giving World Shut Your Mouth a very good review. I think he slags me off in that first book, Head On, which also talks about you. But I think he's got such a brilliant mind. I mean, what would you ever have anticipated the career that he's had since you parted ways with him?
No. And then, yes, it's a mixed thing, because one of it is I've always thought that having spent so much time with him, literally being with him every day, that Julian is highly intelligent, is fascinated with all sorts. He could go in any direction he wanted to. He chose to go into music. He chose to go into writing. He became an expert on, the ancient Britons. He's written books on it. He's done talks in Oxford and Cambridge. He's nothing surprises me with Julian. And then on the other hand, you sit there and go, well, how can you ever go down that road that he's gone down, which is like the non-commercial road, and still be able to carve out a career? And still be able to put food on the table, managed to send his two girls off to really good schools and take them through university, and look after his gorgeous wife, Dorian. He's truly remarkable character. And I have to say that I'm very fortunate that I remain friends with him today.
Oh, good.
We do see each other. He used to do mad things. There was a period of time when he used to get dressed up, and everyone used to assume he looked like some kind of Nazi German sort of character.
It was a strange look. Yeah.
The cap was from the American Air Force, so let's eliminate that one. The uniform, I believe, was Hungarian or something else. But it just sort of, people would look at him, and he used to wear those big boots and the whole thing. And he used to turn up at my house with this massive, I do mean massive American truck, which he used as his touring equipment van, which looked like a Humvee but wasn't, dressed up like he was, and he would stand out in the middle of the street shouting, "Batesy, I'm here!" At which neighbours would be looking through their curtains and going, "What the hell is that?"
Wow, that's glorious. That's glorious.
But here's the bit that most people don't know about Peggy's suicide. Quite often I have the position of people saying, "I hope you don't mind, but, I'd like to come and play you something." And it's with artists that are signed to other record labels. And some of them are very famous, and some of them are not so famous. So I am used to people going, "I hope you don't mind, but, I'd really like to have a chat with you about what I'm doing." So this being the case, Julian called up one time and said, "Look, I really want to come in and see you. I want to play you some music. This is for my next album." So I said, "Okay." we arranged for one evening he would come round to the office, and he brought in a bag of cassettes of all the various songs. And we went through them all. And I said, oh, that's very good. That's potentially a hit. That's a good song. I like that one. Not sure about that. Okay, what else have you got? Let's go. Oh, yeah, that's very good. Went through the whole thing. He was very happy with all of this, and he went off. And then he went off to make Peggy Suicide. And not one of the hits that I picked out is on that record.
Yeah, very Copian tale.
I mean, is that just perversity? Is that just almost sort of willful perversity?
You'd have to ask him. As for your answer, I can't swear what you're going to get.
Yeah.
No, I think with Julian, he did not enjoy his time being a successful pop star.
Right.
The classic one, I've got a letter from him from some years ago, which he is really sweet about our relationship and about our friendship. And at the very bottom of the letter, he put, the thing is, David, you always saw me and heard me as Jim Morrison. I always saw me and heard me as Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So if you take that as being Julian's preferred choice, I'd rather be Iggy and go down that road and do what I want, rather being constrained by the success of Jim Morrison, and we all know where that ended up. I reject that, and I take that.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have to move on. I just want to mention...